Hello. I'm seeing people join on here, so I'm happy to see the participants keep growing. People will continue to log in, but without further ado, I'll at least start to kick off the meeting here. I just want to officially welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is a title preview event with Baker Publishing Group's two fiction divisions, Bethany House and Revell. Today's webinar is presented in partnership with Overdrive for their In the Know webinar series. We're excited to welcome you all to this special event, and we're also really excited to share our special guests and some of our stories with you. So books give us the unique ability to travel to another place in time as we get lost within the pages of a good story. But contemporary stories allow us to step into someone else's shoes today, whether just to escape for a moment of relaxation or deepen our empathy for our neighbor. This afternoon, we have the privilege of being joined by 5 of our top contemporary fiction authors. I'll actually cue them to start their videos right now, and I'll share a little bit about each author before we start. So first and foremost, Toni Shiloh is a wife, a mom, a U.S. Air Force vet, and an award-winning Christian contemporary romance author. Toni has 2 novels with Bethany House so far, and she also has 2 more coming out this year. Her 2022 novel, In Search of a Prince, won the first ever Christie Amplify Award for representing diverse fiction or voices in fiction, and was also highly praised by Oprah Daily, Pop Sugar, Library Journal, and Booklist. In Search of a Prince was named to Oprah Daily's list of the best romance novels of 2022, Pop Sugar's list of the best novels to read for a romantic getaway, and just received really glowing praise. Toni and her family make their home in Virginia. Up next for Bethany House, with over 1.3 million copies sold, we have Rachel Hauck. Rachel is one of the most recognizable names in inspirational fiction. A Carol and Christie Award winner, Rachel is also the New York Times, USA Today, and Wall Street Journal bestselling author of over 30 novels, earning her a Romantic Times Lifetime Achievement Award. Her book, Once Upon a Prince, was even adapted into an original Hallmark movie, so you could actually go and watch that today if you wanted to. From an early age, Rachel believed in the power of story, and now she spends her days trying to capture life's complexities, the romance, heartache, and hope that we each experience in her own books. Rachel is joining us from sunny Central Florida, where she lives with her husband. Now for our Revell authors. First up, we have Janine Rosche. Janine is new to the Revell roster this year. The author of the Madison River Romance and Whisper Canyon series of novels, we are so glad to have her with us. Prone to wander, Janine says she finds as much comfort on the open road as she does at home. This longing to chase adventure, behold splendor, and experience redemption is woven into her contemporary stories. When she isn't traveling or writing novels, she teaches family life education courses and takes many pictures of her sleeping dogs. Janine lives in northern Ohio, right along its border with Michigan. Next up is Liz Johnson. Liz is the New York Times bestselling author of more than a dozen novels, including Beyond the Tides and The Last Way Home, as well as the Georgia Coast Romance and Prince Edward Island Dream series. Liz specializes in writing stories of true love filled with heart, humor, and happily ever afters. She currently works in marketing, and while she makes her home in Phoenix, Arizona, she daydreams of returning to the PEI. And finally, we have another very established name to introduce. With over 1.5 million copies sold, Suzanne Woods Fisher is the award-winning and best-selling author of more than 30 books, including The Moonlight School, Anything But Plain, and The Sweet Life, as well as The Three Sisters Island, Nantucket Legacy, Amish Beginnings, The Bishop's Family, The Deacon's Family, and the Inn at Eagle Hill series. One thing to note about Suzanne is that she actually writes and is very well known for both her Amish fiction stories as well as her contemporary romances that provide a fun escape for any reader. Suzanne currently lives in Central California. So now that you all know a little bit more about our featured guests, I do want to take a quick pause just to give you a little bit of an idea of how the next 60 minutes or so will go. So following the graphic on your screen, first up, in a moment, we will kick off our discussion with our authors to talk to them about the new releases they have coming out this summer and also what it's like to write engaging stories set in the present day. I believe there will be more information available for each of these titles in the chat as we go, so keep an eye out for those. And following the panel, we'll close out the webinar today by sharing a few of our Baker Publishing Group staff picks, so stay tuned for that. We're excited to be able to share a few summer and fall 2023 titles that we think you guys will all love. These are great additions for any summer reading list. So without further ado, I will hand things over to our senior publicist, Karen Steele, to start our author panel. Hope you all enjoy.
Thank you, Anne, for, thank you so much for taking time to introduce all our authors, Anne, and I just want to now dive into talking to them and going over some questions about their books. So the first author I'd like to start with is Janine. And Janine, you have written a standalone novel called With Every Memory. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your new release.
Okay, so at its core, With Every Memory is the story of a family on the verge of collapse. A terrible accident has taken the life of their teenage son, Austin, and he was really the glue that kept the family together. The same accident also gave the mother, Lori, a traumatic brain injury, and that has erased the last 9 years of her life. And so the family that she's coming home to at the beginning of the story is not the same family that she remembers. And as she starts learning what this, what her husband and her daughter are like now, she starts wondering what she has missed in the last 9 years, why they are so distant. And she also has a chance at almost restarting her own life. So it's a story about struggling in marriage. It's about finding hope to carry on after a loss, pursuing the life that you dreamed of, and both young love and second time around love. So I hope people can enjoy it when they read it.
Thank you, Janine. Liz, I'm going to turn to you next. You have written the book Summer in the Spotlight, which is the final book in your Prince Edward Island Shores series. It follows Beyond the Tides, which was written in 2021, and The Last Way Home in 2022. Can you tell us a little bit more about Summer in the Spotlight?
Sure. Summer in the Spotlight is about a hurricane that hits Prince Edward Island, and it nearly destroys the local community theater, which is really the hub of the community. And so Kelsey Ahern, who grew up on that stage, grew up performing with her grandmother. She can't stand to see her childhood love be torn down. And so she sets out to save it. And she invites Levi Ross, who is the quiet, shy, youngest Ross brother, to help her. And he's always been a little bit in love with her. And so he willingly agrees to give her a hand with that. But as they work on saving the theater, they find that they run into a lot of things from their past that are kind of haunting them, and that they have to deal with the past in order to really come to terms with a hope for the future.
Thank you, Liz. And Suzanne, I'm going to turn to you next. The Secret to Happiness is, of course, the second book in your Cape Cod Creamery series, which follows The Sweet Life, published in 2022. So can you tell us a little bit more about The Secret to Happiness?
There, how's that?
Yeah.
I'm back in, sorry about that. So this picture a Cape Cod on a perfect summer day. Picture an exuberant relative bursting into your house. And that's where this story begins. There is a character named Callie Dixon, and Callie is an executive chef at a hotel in Boston. She's really risen to the top very quickly, and suddenly she makes a colossal mistake. She ends up causing food poisoning for over 200 attendees at a food safety conference. And with that, she is fired. She ends up on Cape Cod at her aunt's house, this ice cream shop, where she's kind of hoping to get her bounce back because it's up and left. But the thing about Callie is that it's not just the fact that she made a mistake, but there's a reason she made this mistake. So with that, I will pass it on.
It's awesome.
Sounds great. And Rachel, you have written a
Hi.
standalone novel called The Best Summer of Our Lives. Can you tell us a little bit about The Best Summer of Our Lives?
Absolutely. It's about the dream that we all have growing up, that we were going to have that summer, the best summer of our lives. And I bet you everybody listening right now could either pinpoint that summer, and it could be anywhere from childhood all the way up to being a grandparent. But it's about four friends. They meet in kindergarten and they manage to survive junior high and high school together. They're best friends. And that summer between high school and college, they are going to have the best summer of their lives. But they get in a little bit of trouble. They pulled a ridiculous prank and pulled some strings. And now they find themselves on a Greyhound bus to a little town called Tumbleweed, Oklahoma, to be camp counselors. This is not the best summer of their lives. This is nothing that they had planned. Backpacking through Europe, days at the beach, shopping, getting ready to rush sorority at Florida State. And so, if they go out, though, what we learn is that they had secrets. Everybody has secrets. And it kind of challenge us to believe what really is the best summer of our lives. So it's about friendship, a lot of nostalgia. If anybody's nostalgic about the 70s, you absolutely want to get a hold of this book. we look at culture, music, movies, sayings. It's a really fun look at the 1970s and even 1999 a little bit. So it's about restoration.
Thank you, Rachel. Toni, we're going to talk about The Lone Script. It's the first book in the Love in the Spotlight series. Can you tell us a little bit about your upcoming release?
I'd be happy to. So the Love Script is about a regular hairstylist who lives in Hollywood and she loves to shine the spotlight on other people, make them look their best. But then the spotlight gets turned on her when a picture of her and the Hollywood heartthrob Lamont Booker circulates the internet. And it looks like they are in a relationship, and it brings into question Lamont's faith. Does he really stand for what he said he stood for? Is he, a good Christian? And so they enter into a fake relationship trying to prevent the whole cancel culture aspect. So it's about, perception versus truth. It's got humor in it, movie quotes, a little pop culture, and it digs into faith and, what we believe about ourselves and about the journey we're on.
Thank you, Toni. Liz, I'm going to start with you with the next question. And especially since summer is in the title of your book, I'm wondering what you feel are the qualities that make for a great summer read.
Yeah, I think a great summer read for me is always one that transports me, that I feel like I just dive deep into it and I kind of escape the rest of the world. I escape every worry, concern, anything that I'm dealing with that I don't want to be dealing with at the time, whether it's laundry or dishes or, heavier things. So for me, a great summer read is always a good escape. And that can look like a lot of different things. It doesn't always have to be light and fluffy, although I love a good light and fluffy book. But it can also just really be just something that has a really satisfying ending as well. Something that I feel like just really wraps up really nice. And I have all the warm fuzzies when I'm done with it.
That sounds great. Suzanne, can you add to that what makes you feel like there are good qualities for a good summer read?
I was thinking about that question because escape is an obvious answer, of course. That's what summer's all about. But summer's also a time to recharge and renew. And I feel as if some of the best books I've read are the ones that leave you with that sense of what's working, what's not, and how am I going to make some changes. So I guess that's what I feel like. It's sort of an inspiration to really make your life a little better.
Thank you, Suzanne. And Rachel, do you have some insights that you can share with us?
I agree with everything they said, but I just had one word kind of comes to mind for me, and that's drama. I just like a lot of story, a lot happening. Glad that's not me, and also that satisfying ending where man, it's just bad in the middle, but at the end you get all those warm fuzzies, maybe a couple of tears, bringing that whole story together.
Thank you. Toni, I would love to hear your opinion. In your opinion, what are the qualities for a good summer read?
I definitely agree with all the ladies. I love to be transported, love that little drama, but the satisfying ending with the tears or Like Liz said, it doesn't necessarily have to be light and fluffy. I just want to feel the emotion and feel connected with the characters and feel like I've been put into their lives, and maybe a little bit like it was the best summer of my life read.
There you go.
And Janine, what would you have to add to this?
Well, I'm a big traveler, so I do love when a book can take me to a place that I've never been to, like, I don't know, Oklahoma. Maybe I could try that one, or Hollywood with Tony's. But I think that what I love most is when you are so invested in the story that whether you're sitting on a beach chair or on a porch swing or even in just your living room, that you really feel like the author has your heart in their hands with every single page. And you're so invested that you don't care so much about sleep or dinner reservations, or even if the tide is washing away your sandals. That's the kind of book that I love.
I love that. That sounds like fun.
Good.
So we're going to transition to the next question. And Suzanne, I'm going to start with you. Your novel, actually your whole series, is set in Cape Cod, but can you tell us a little bit more about the inspiration for your novel, and then just touch upon actually the inspiration for your series?
Well, the novel, The Secret to Happiness, is, as I mentioned, a story about this chef that created a, terrible situation at a food safety conference. It's a true story. My daughter is a professor at a university and she's in food science, and she came across this story of a food safety summit, and someone poisoned, over 200 people. No one died, but they ended up in their room for the rest of the conference. And I just kind of tucked that away, thinking, oh, this would be good. And it is, and it's kind of an interesting story about coming back from something really shameful and horrible, and that's where the whole idea of the secrets to happiness kind of pull her back in. Now, the larger story, Cape Cod and ice cream, has to do with a couple of things. My husband is a ice cream maker, he went to Penn State ice cream school, and he is truly an ice cream maker. He is really into it, and my editor has been to my home a couple times and has tasted his ice cream. And as we were looking at a series set in the coast, Cape Cod's an obvious choice, of course, but she just said, I want a story about ice cream. And so I thought, okay, you want ice cream? Here it comes. So the first one is The Sweet Life. It's really about ice cream. The second one's actually about popsicles, which probably sounds silly, but it's not. It really kind of fits in.
Thank you very much. Rachel, can you share a little bit about the inspiration behind The Best Summer of Our Lives?
I have a really deep beginning to this story. I liked the title, The Summer of 77. So I just liked this. I'm like, what can I do with that? So I started looking into, I had moved to Tallahassee, Florida from Homestead, Florida in the summer of 77. And I was just looking for some kind of backdrop story. And I had mistakenly thought that Ted Bundy had murdered the Chi Omegas at Florida State that summer. Very, dramatic beginning, but my timing was off, which was really great because as I researched Ted Bundy, I did not want to write anything, even a backdrop about him. Just mentioning him gives me the creeps. So, but I just kind of said, what do I do? And then I played the obvious note. One of the characters will be named Summer. And then I just kind of took off from there, and all the friends have seasonal names and they have a nickname, the Four Seasons, a little throwback to Hello God, It's Me, Margaret. They had a little nickname for their little group. And I just kind of got into, why are you friends? What's this story about? And I just played it out in my mind as I developed the characters and I gave them all of their issues. Then I tried to put them all together on the same stage and watch that play out. So that's kind of was my initial inspiration. I walked a lot and prayed a lot during the summer of 21. And so every night, God and I were having discussions about what is this story? And so anyway, here it is. I hope everybody likes it.
Thank you, Rachel. Toni, can you tell us the inspiration behind the love script?
I would be happy to. So with the love script, my last two books with Bethany House were royals, and I really loved that, but I kind of wanted to, I don't want to say be normal, take it down a notch, but essentially that's what I was thinking, to take it down a notch. But I thought, in America, like who's royal to us? Like who do we kind of idolize? And immediately I thought of Hollywood, but I wanted to have a normal person as well. So I paired the Hollywood heartthrob with the hairstylist, thinking she would bring normalcy, which does, a little snark. And I just kind of went from there, like, what's your story? Sort of like Rachel, like, who are you? Like, why do you guys have these jobs? Why are you the way you are? And how does this play into the greater scheme of paparazzi ruining your life?
Thank you, Toni. And Janine, I'd love to hear some more from you as well in regards to your inspiration.
So I wrote this book back in 2016, the first draft. And at that time, I was surrounded by a lot of friends who were struggling in their marriages. It was not the strongest point in my own marriage with my husband. And what I found is that, especially in the church, that is a no topic. Like you don't talk about your marriage if it's suffering. You don't talk about your spouse if you're, really frustrated. And in fact, the only people that I found that were willing to talk to me and give me advice were the people who wanted me to just cut my losses and run. And of course, it's not as simple as that. And so I wanted to write a book that really dives into the intricacies of a struggling marriage and a family in crisis, and what different avenues they can take to try to come back together without losing themselves.
Thank you, Janine. And Liz, we'll wrap up with you for this question for Summer in the Spotlight. Can you give us some insight on what was the inspiration for your novel?
So my first trip to Prince Edward Island was in 2010, and my mom and I went for 5 days thinking that would be plenty of time to see the whole island. And of course, we barely scratched the surface. There's so much to see and do there. And but our last day on the island, our last full day, a hurricane came through, and it was pretty low key, pretty not a lot of damage, but it did like shut down power in Charlottetown. And so we, like, our last day, we were thinking, oh, we're going to do shopping and we're going to do all these things, but we kept going to stores that were closed and places that were closed. And but one thing that we really noticed about the city, Charlottetown, at in the midst of a hurricane, was just how kind people were, how neighborly they were, even to visitors like us. And so it got me thinking about what would it be like to have a hurricane really hit the island. And I did a little research and saw that, some pretty major hurricanes had hit the island. And so I started writing the book, and then I finished the book, and sent it off to my editor. And then Hurricane Fiona hit the New England coast and Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island last year. And it was so heartbreaking for me. And yet it was 100% true to what I know of the people of PEI, that they would band together to do everything they could to help each other, to help their island, to, repair and restore their island. And it just, it broke my heart to see the island suffer. But at the same time, it just really just reminded me that everything that I know about the people there and their kindness is really true. And so anyway, so that was kind of the inspiration for a hurricane hitting in my book, Summer in the Spotlight. And then, of course, this is the third in a series. And so this is the youngest of the Ross brothers. He finally gets his own book, Levi.
Thank you, Liz. So Rachel, I'm going to start with you for your next question. And with over 30 books written, I'm wondering if you could tell us about your writing process.
Oh yeah. Okay. I do planning. I plan. I'm what I call a planter. I'm kind of more in between the whole plotter, someone who knows chapter by chapter what they're doing, and someone who just sits down and goes, what's going to happen today? I do a lot of character work. I use a story equation written by Susie Warren to kind of like build my characters. And for this particular book, as I was doing the first time I was pitching to Bethany House, I had a super long, like 30-page synopsis. I kind of told myself the story. So that's one of the things I try to do, is tell myself the story. So, and usually what I end up with is nothing like the story that I told. All the big blocks are in place, but nothing else. And then I do 2,000 to 3,000 words a day. I have a first draft process, about 70,000 words in. I stop and start over. And then I get a little farther down the line, and then I'll stop and start over. And then I write, I'm pulling more and more. So it's not all brand new words. And then I'll do a final kind of pass process before I turn the book in. So a lot of research goes on in the middle of that. Thank you for Amazon, for all the books that people put up on Amazon. Thank you, YouTube people who put up like how to dock a ship. I needed that one time. All those little things. Thank you for everybody who posts things on Pinterest. Really and truly, those things really do help us authors, because what did hair look like in the 70s? Even though I was a 70s girl, I want to go and look at all the various hairstyles, or what were the top songs of the 70s, or what were the top movies of the 70s, or what was that actor's life in the 70s like? And so I'm just researching the entire time that I'm writing and hammering out words and trying to be unique, reading these guys, reading other authors, looking for ways to not say something the way I always say it, but then somehow you still come out. Sometimes I say I'm tired of reading me, but that's kind of like my process. And then I'm a huge rewriter. I love getting notes back from editors, and I love that finally in that rewrite process is when I feel like ka-ching, I have finally hit what I love about the story. And what I mostly love is story. And so it takes me a while to dig in and find some of those layers and find out what the characters really want. And then for me, as an author writing from a Christian worldview, I don't go in with any spiritual understanding or ideas at all. That's the conversation that God and I continually have. I always ask God, how do you want to show up in the story? And so as I'm writing, I'm waiting for those moments where I feel like, okay, here's where I can show God showing up in the story. And usually I have a supernatural breaking into the natural character or moment. And so that's kind of the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. And Toni, can you give some insights into your writing process?
Yes, so I'm definitely a pantser. Plotting gives me highs. Knowing the end means I don't want to write the story because now I know the end. But what I do like to do is dig into the characters. And I'm just like Rachel. I'm looking at videos, Pinterest. I have a whole storyboard every time I write of what I think they look like, where their environment is. You know, I think I put hairstylists, t-shirts, like the whole gambit. And then once I feel like I really know the characters, I'm like, okay, so, you know, tell me your story. Like, what are you doing? And I just let them write each chapter. I may occasionally think, oh, I think a scene like this will be a good thing, but it's really me just having fun the first draft. And then I'll have my critique partners look at it, and then I'll incorporate any of their comments or suggestions and go back and do it again. Unlike Rachel, I do not like rewrites. I do not like editing. I do not like all of that because I think for me, it's more, I don't know what to do. How do I change it? I'll understand the revision suggestions of how they want something done. And I'm like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. But how do I do that? So there's a lot of dark chocolate eating and inks when I'm doing the later versions.
Thank you. Janine, I'm going to turn to you now and ask what insights you can provide on your writing process.
So I always start with some kind of question that I have about life, relationships, faith. For With Every Memory, it was, what do you do when life doesn't turn out the way that you expected it to? And it's always something that I struggle with. It is very rare for me to actually figure out the answer to that by the end of the book. Most of the time I'm still, I'm further along in the process, but I'm still questioning those things. And then once I do that, I try to pinpoint a setting where I have just loved the place, loved the people, so that I can find a good fit of where it should take place. And then I'm a little unusual in that I like to start my brainstorming with either the first kiss or an extremely pivotal moment in the story, because it shows me what the characters want most in life, what they fear most in life. And then I work backwards at what had to happen to get them to that point, where the kiss happened or, the big event happened. So I'm a little different in that way. I try to be a plotter, but it doesn't always go that well.
Thank you so much, Janine. Honestly, everybody does it a different way, that's for sure. So Liz, I'm going to turn to you and would love to hear your great valuable advice to, how you do writing.
Well, I think I do writing however it comes out. I don't really have a system. I think that might help, but I don't have one. And so far it's working, that I tend to meet these characters in my mind and then just start having conversations with them, to myself while I'm out on a walk, while I'm, just going through life. I may be driving to work and then and then going, how did I get to work? Because I've spent the whole commute just thinking about my characters and just sort of spending time with them and trying to get to know them. And because I write romance, I'm, I feel really confident that I always know where the end is going to be. I know like what I know that they're going to be happy at the end. I know that there's going to be a happily ever after. And so that warms my heart because I can just work in that direction. But it's figuring out what's keeping them apart and why are they choosing not to be together when it would be so much easier if they would just get together. That would, it'd be a really short book. But it's so fun to sort of unpack those characters. And so I feel like I usually spend a couple months with my characters, just sort of pondering them, thinking about them. Why are they the way they are? What are their fears? That kind of thing. And then I usually start writing very slowly. And so my first 10,000 words take months sometimes because I just am just really slow. But then once I start to usually once I hit that 10,000 word mark, then it's oh, okay, great. I'm starting to really get to know these characters in writing and they feel like they're coming alive on the page for me. And then I just spend more time with them. And then, usually then it's a mad scramble to get the book done on time because I'm a terrible procrastinator. So that's a huge part of my writing process. But I have to say that I tend to be very motivated and I write well under deadline. And so that works really well for me to have okay, I've got to get this done and got to do this. And and I'm not really a plotter until about the last, maybe the last quarter of the book is always where I'm okay, I have about X number of words left to write. And all of these things have to happen to wrap this story up. And so then I start listing out, okay, this scene, this scene, this scene. And then I write to a scene as opposed to writing to kind of the writing to as the characters are talking to me.
Thank you, Liz. Suzanne, I'd love for you to honor us with your little techniques on your writing process.
Well, it's so interesting hearing how everyone's so different. And I appreciate that because you all have incredible talent and everyone just comes at it a different way. But to answer this question, I actually have a theory about writing. This is how I write, super disciplined, up really early in the morning, hit a word count every day. It may not always be great words, but it is, kind of moving the plot forward. And it comes from this 20-mile march. I don't know if you ever heard of this, but it's the Norwegian and the Englishman that were trying to get to the South Pole the quickest way back in the early 1900s. And it was the Norwegian had this philosophy, I think his name was Edmundson, that we were going to go 17 to 20 miles a day, no matter what, whatever the conditions. And then we stop and then regroup. And then the next day, the same. And the Englishman had a completely different idea, which is how most writers work, which is kind of letting the conditions drive it. When things are good, you go and go and go. And when, it was a cloudy, stormy day, they would stop and rest and fix their equipment. But interestingly enough, it was the Norwegian that made it. He got there and back first. The Englishmen, they all died about 11 miles from a cache of food, kind of a sad story. But to me, that's what it is. It's just like continually getting into this chair in my laundry room where I am right now and just writing and writing and writing. So, oh, and
thank you,
Rachel, Farrah Fawcett Majors. I'm thinking Farrah Fawcett was the hairstyle of the 70s.
Absolutely.
with it. I think it's coming back.
She made an appearance. I had Farrah hair. Woohoo. I miss it.
Thank you, Suzanne. All right, Toni, I'm going to start with you for the next question. And I know you write sweet, satisfying romances. How do you ensure that there's depth in your characters?
Oh, that's a great question. I think sort of like Janine said earlier, I like to put a question that I have. Usually it's about faith. I'll just pick, not at random, but what I think suits the characters and suits the story. And it's a question that I've always wondered or wrestled with. And then I give it to the character. That way, as I'm writing, I can wrestle alongside the character. I can put my emotion of not knowing the answer and how it feels to not know the answer, or you're comparing yourself to others because you feel like they know the answer. And it just feels like it organically comes out and there's depth to them and the characters are now real and just like us in everyday life.
Thank you, Toni. And Janine, I'm going to turn to you next. You are truly a master storyteller and you have a gift for balancing romance with the perfect amount of family drama. How do you reach this where you have depth in your characters?
So I've been told my entire life that I'm a bit much, or I'm a lot, is how some other people put it. And that has actually helped me as a writer because I have so many different aspects of my personality that I'm able to put a little bit of myself into pretty much every character that I write. And so I really can feel what they're going through because probably at some point during that day, I have felt a very similar emotion to what they're dealing with. So I guess that's worked out for me. So to everybody who ever said that to me, thanks, I guess.
That sounds great. All right, Liz, I'm going to ask the same question of you. How do you provide depth in your characters?
Well, I think like Janine said, I'm a very emotional person and I feel deeply. I feel a lot of things very deeply. And so I tend to plug those into my characters, those feelings that I'm experiencing. I think I often look back at either maybe something that I've been learning, maybe something that I've been learning that maybe God has been teaching me, or maybe it's something that I have, like something that I've been through that's been going on in my life. And I just try and incorporate those. Like I think specifically about Beyond the Tides, which was a book that I wrote while my dad was having some major heart issues. And I ended up writing a book that I wasn't anticipating writing. I had a storyline and I knew what Beyond the Tides was going to be about. And then my dad ended up in the hospital during the pandemic, not because of COVID, but he was, I couldn't see him and couldn't spend time with him. And it was a real challenging time. And so that totally informed my book. And I ended up writing this story about like the importance of spending time with the ones you love, like investing in those relationships, why it's so important that we do invest in relationships while we have time, because none of us are promised tomorrow. And so, I think that I kind of whatever's going on in my life, I end up incorporating that into my book, not in like a, A to A or apple to apple kind of, comparison, but the things that I'm learning, I think probably are things that are good reminders for others.
Thank you, Liz. And Suzanne, I would love to hear how you ensure that there's depth in your characters.
Flaws, lots of flaws. And I think unpredictability too. So like in The Secret to Happiness, Callie Dixon gets dragged to this class at the community college led by a local professor of what they call the 4 C's in Cape Cod, the Cape Cod Community College. And he studies happiness. He's been talked into teaching a class about how to become a happier person. Curiously, he's a very gloomy fellow, hardly talks at all. So like just those kind of curious idiosyncrasy, kind of oxymorons, all that kind of thing. I just love making the reader surprised.
Thank you, Suzanne. And Rachel, do you have anything more to add in regards to the depth of your characters? I know that you have a lot of things that you do pour into your characters, so I'd love to hear some more of your insights.
So how much time do we have, Karen? No, I'm kidding. Oh, everybody's like, oh no. For me, it's really about developing the character. So the depth of the character comes from what's the story about, the story question. What do they want? What does my character want when they walk on the page? And then I go a layer deeper. What do they want for themselves? And when I first started writing, I heard somebody say, you want to contrast their greatest fear with their secret desire. And I thought, well, oh, that's good. And so it's from there, it's developed to, the lie that they believe. So if you have a wound, and so for me, the story is about healing that wound. What's the epiphany at the end? What are we going to heal in this character? What can they do in the end they couldn't do in the beginning? And as I ask these questions and start plugging things in and start writing, and of course they start talking, and you get a different idea about some of these things. But I figure the greatest fear and then that secret desire is that thing that's in your heart that wants out, that God's put there. And it's like, can I come out? Can I come out? And that's what that whole inciting incident is for me, is that the inciting incident is going, hey, I'm giving that secret desire an opportunity to function. And so that's kind of what I work through. And the other thing I do a lot, I'm sure you guys do this too. Do you ever find like you're writing in circles? And I'm like, my characters have had this conversation for the last 3 chapters or the last 3 scenes. Why am I writing in circles? There's a great story I'd tell real quick. I was writing the book with Sarah Evans, and this one guy, Rebel, he was a rebel. He just was a perpetual adulterer. And I'm like, she's finally confronting him and they're having this dramatic conversation. And I'm like, I'm just writing in circles. She's just saying, you hurt me over and over. And finally I'm talking in the bathroom mirror and I go, Rebel, why do you do this? And he's like, blah, 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 blah. And I don't understand you. And all of a sudden he goes, you stole my son. And I went, oh, then I had to go to work. Now, what is that comment about? And so that I have fun with it in that way. I think we all do, but it's really trying to find out what I'm writing it, or is there another layer? The question why is always on my lips. Why are you saying this? Why are you doing this? And so I hope that they end up being real people.
Thank you, Janine. Or I'm sorry, Rachel. Now, Janine,
No worries.
I'm transitioning to Janine. I'm going to combine a couple questions here. One of them is, what did you find to be the most challenging with every memory? And also, what do you hope your story how it will impact readers?
So the hardest part for me was I had to go back to high school for this story. My young heroine is 18 at the start of the story, and she is basically flunked out of high school. She really needs some help to be able to keep her life moving forward. And she has to go and face pretty much your worst nightmare in high school of having no friends, having been humiliated, having suffered this terrible loss. And I did not enjoy going back to my high school memories, but it was, I kind of combated that by creating this character, Xander, who was her brother's best friend. And I thought, if I had a Xander to go through high school with me, probably would have made it, a little bit better, I think. And so she also has an amazing school librarian who kind of understands her and lets her sneak out to the library. So that helps too, for all you librarians out there. So as far as what I want people to get from my story is I dedicated this book to all the people who were fighters, people who have had to fight for their loved ones, their marriage, their dream, keeping somebody's memory alive, or just to keep carrying on. I mean, we all have had those times in our life where it's a fight just to get out of bed or to take a shower or to have that conversation. And I wanted people, after they read this book, to feel like maybe if these characters in this situation could do it, maybe they can fight one more day.
Thank you very much. And then Liz, I'm going to ask you the same question. What did you find most challenging in writing Summer in the Spotlight? And what do you hope your readers will gain from it?
So So one of the things that I think was really hard about writing Summer in the Spotlight from a practical perspective is that Levi doesn't talk much. He's a quiet guy. And I think writers know that like so much of our story is dialogue. And so I had to somehow figure out how he's communicating when he's not chatty. Thankfully, he's got a partner in crime, Kelsey, who is super chatty. And so they can balance each other out. So practically speaking, that was really hard. But also, I think one of the most difficult things for me, because this was really new for me, is this 3-book series really builds on each other in a way that my previous series don't necessarily. And so in this 3rd book, I had to wrap up the whole series, but I needed to sort of figure out, there are certain characters that I was like, do they come back into the picture? Do they, like, you know, what are they doing? And how is this affecting these 3 brothers? And, you know, what am I going to do with them, kind of thing. And so I spent a lot of time wrestling. Okay, am I going to have this character come back? Am I going to redeem him? Am I going to not redeem him? Am I going to, like, what do I need to do? And at the end of the day, it always came back to, what do I need for my hero and heroine to experience what I need them to experience, to heal those wounds that as Rachel said, to heal those wounds that they have. And so that was really challenging for me, but I had a great time with it. And ultimately, you know, Levi being somebody who doesn't talk much, like we discover that that's because people have said to him that he doesn't have anything worth saying. And that's a wound that is so deep for him that he's really taken to heart. And I just thought, like, as I was writing this book, I just thought, man, how many times in our lives have people told us, like, oh, just be quiet. Like, you don't, like, your opinion doesn't matter. You don't count, kind of thing. And I just really want readers to read this and be reminded, A, of the power of our words to speak life over other people. And also the importance of knowing the truth that when somebody speaks death over you, that's not the final say. That's not the final answer, that there is hope, and that, you know, that what you say has something to, you know, to give to the world. And so anyway, that's really, I guess, the takeaway for this book.
Thank you, Liz.
So good.
So Suzanne, I'm going to ask you this Secret to Happiness, which is the 2nd book in your series. What was the most challenging thing about writing this book? And then also, what do you hope readers will gain from reading this book?
Well, the main character in this story had a happy front. She actually is kind of based on someone I know very well. Strong personality, happy all the time. That was just her persona. And all of a sudden, it'd been really a coping mechanism. And she had an enforced pause when she got fired from poisoning so many people. And she had to kind of stop and face a pretty serious issue in her life that she'd been running from for a long time. Fear is at the heart of the matter in so many of these issues. And I think that was a lot of trying to write her path back to finding what true happiness was, which meant I was studying a lot about neuroscience. And it's fascinating. I feel like I'm barely scratching the surface still. And this book was written a year ago, and I'm still fascinated by how the brain holds information, how we can, you know, our brain, what we think really affects our brain. What we focus on, we find. I think a lot of that was part of this story. However, I always can veer into being sounding like a textbook. So trying to keep things in, you know, as you can see from the cover, it's a light summer read, but there is depth to it. So I think that was my hardest thing. Now, the takeaway value, the best thing of all, without giving anything away, is that I think Callie Dixon in this enforced pause understood how precious time is and how it is fleeting. And that is a good message for all of us.
Thank you, Suzanne. Rachel, I'd love to hear your insights as far as what was the most challenging when you wrote The Best Summer of Our Lives, and what do you hope readers can take away with it?
Okay. The challenging thing for me was I had an ensemble cast. So I had 4 POV characters in 1997 and 1977 and 1997. So I really had to decide that Summer was the main storyteller. She kind of is the linchpin. She's the beginning and the end. And so it's trying to balance all of their stories, again, without being repetitive, without telling you what you already know from the other scenes. And then going through the editing process, I realized I had a couple of scenes, say it was Autumn's scene, but I had this group think happening, like, whose POV am I in here? Who's talking? What emotion do I need? I need it from Autumn. How come I'm not in her? So that was kind of something that even late going through the line edit, I would realize, wait, I'm kind of in a group mind here. I have to go and fix this. So that was kind of a challenge for me. And then I think just figuring out, when you have an ensemble cast and you want to have some kind of spiritual thread, you can't have it with all of them. So who's going to be the one who does that? And so that was kind of who was going to encounter some kind of supernatural event, who was going to encounter God basically in the story. And so I had to figure that out, and just kind of balancing all of the emotions, going back to high school, as Janine said, and trying to figure out what I liked about that. Just lots of thoughts going through, even touched on some of the things when I was in college, and just figuring out how to balance things. And also I mentioned that I thought I was going to have this backdrop of like Ted Bundy, taking these women's lives. And so it was going to introduce kind of a fear factor. So the story is really about the best summer of your life, but it's not about that, but what happens when those things do happen. And they happen a lot in our world today. And so I used the Camp Scott Girl Scout murders as kind of that impetus to introduce a fear factor that makes you quantify and qualify your life. And so as I was writing, I wanted to find a way to make sure I honored their memory and honored those little girls who were killed the summer of 77, and how I would not, if any of their family or friends read the book, that they would feel honored. And so just trying to figure out even if I wanted to include it, but it was a main part of what happened at camp. So, their reaction to it. So I had to keep it there for that purpose, but also trying to honor the girls as a process. And so that was something I had to balance. And I hope I did a good job, because it was really a tragic event for those who endured it. Anyway, so always, dialogue versus prose and all of those things that are hard. But yeah.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
And Toni, I'm going to end with you for this particular question. What was the most challenging about writing the love script, and what do you hope readers can take away with?
So the most challenging thing was for my characters, I kind of made Lamont's life get better once he started fake dating Nevaeh. His life starts going on an upward trend, and Nevaeh's goes downward. And then I got to the part in the story, probably like maybe 3/4 in, where I'm like, okay, so how does it end? How do I resolve everything when her life went down and his went up? And I think that was probably the most challenging. I must have rewrote it out of my own free will a few times before I was satisfied with how it ended. And as far as, what I'm hoping readers get out of it, I really touched a lot about, how you perceive people, instant judgments, getting judged in the church, getting judged on the internet. And I hope that by the end of the book that people remember to see the humanity in others, even when you're seeing them on the internet and not face to face. I think sometimes social media has been, a blessing, but at other times it has stripped humanity in ways. And I would really love to see people incorporate it back and remember that, we're all God's children.
Thank you, Toni. And I just wanted to thank all of you authors that have provided some valuable insight and advice and everything else that you have brought to the table today. It's just so much appreciated, and I know will be of great help to our listening audience. And I would now like to transition to some of our staff picks, and Molly is going to start out with the first one.
Hi, I want to apologize for my screen a second. I'm hoping it will resolve itself in a second. But either way, I am excited to talk to you all about Amanda Cox's newest release, He Should Have Told the Bees. Amanda's writing has won the Christie Award for Book of the Year 2 years in a row, and she's following those books with another captivating and moving tale. He Should Have Told the Bees follows the lives of two young women who are unexpectedly thrust together. When her father passes, Beckett Walsh finds herself co-owner of his apiary with a woman she's never even heard of. In her journey to maintain the farm, she must confront both her severe anxiety and secrets from the past that threaten to dismantle her beliefs about her beloved father. Her co-owner, Callie Peterson, brings her own baggage to the venture, including an addict mother and dreams much different from beekeeping. But these two women may find that their conflicting goals boil down to a similar need: home. Cox uses her master's degree in professional counseling to create characters that resonate deeply with readers in this newest release coming in August. Now I'm going to pass it over to Hannah.
Hi, everyone. I think if my host can please set my video back to going, we can, there we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. I am really excited to share with everyone our debut author, Holly Varney, her brand new novel, On Moonberry Lake. It's a whimsical and uplifting story about the power of a small town community. Our main character, Cora Matthews, hasn't been to her family's lodge on Moonberry Lake in years. After burying her mother and breaking off her engagement at the last minute, a chance to regroup on the beautiful lakeshore is just what Cora needs to figure out what's next. Once there, the only thing that's a bigger mess than her own life is the dilapidated building she'll be living in. But if Cora can stick it out, she may find the healing she's been looking for in a way that she never expected. Featuring an ensemble cast of quirky yet lovable characters, a delightful setting, and a heartwarming story, Varney shines in this debut novel about new friendships and ordinary miracles. It's also a perfect addition to any summer reading list and will have you wishing you could spend the summer or a lifetime on Moonberry Lake. And now I'll pass to Rila.
Thanks so much, Hannah. I get to share about the legacy of Longdale Manor by Carrie Taransky. Carrie Taransky is an award-winning author. She's best known for her Edwardian historical romance novels. And we're really excited about her upcoming release, The Legacy of Longdale Manor, which is her first dual-time novel set in both the Edwardian era and 100 years later in 2012. It revolves around the Longdale Manor estate in England's beautiful Lake District and two memorable heroines across a century. The 2012 heroine is an art historian tasked with appraising the art at the manor, and in her work finds the diary of the 1912 heroine. There's a sweet romance for each heroine, and both uncover secrets and are working through revelations about their families. The themes of redemption and forgiveness are touching and woven nicely alongside romance, and of course has lots of appeal for Anglophiles. And now I'm going to pass it over to Lindsay.
Thanks, Rayla. I am so excited to share about a second chance romance coming out in October by debut author Rebecca Millette. Julia Monroe Begins Again is a quirky and charming contemporary romance, the first in the series, called Beignets for Two. So it's set in lively New Orleans. Julia Monroe has just turned 40, and after abruptly becoming a widow a decade earlier, she's facing the challenges of being a single mom to two teenagers. She's planning to expand her cleaning business to help make ends meet, but her plans are about to change because an ex has moved back into town. Samuel Reed is a medically discharged Green Beret, and he's also the man who broke Julia's heart in college. Now that he's back in town, he's doing his best to get back into Julia's life. They've both kept secrets from each other, and there's a lot they need to overcome to give a relationship a chance. Rebecca Millette is a fun, bright voice in this genre, and this book is perfect for lovers of rom-coms. On to Rachel.
Hello, everybody. In our opinion, it's not too early to start thinking about Christmas. So we're excited to kick off the 2023 holiday season with two contemporary romances from Toni Shiloh and Sarah Monzon. Toni Shiloh's You Make It Feel Like Christmas is a heartwarming novel of a woman who returns home from the holidays to witness her sister's marriage to her ex-boyfriend. But her heart is open to a new love that will last beyond Christmas Day. In All's Fair in Love and Christmas by Sarah Monzon, this one's a humorous rom-com where two colleagues participate in a workplace competition for a job promotion. But winning has less to do with work performance and everything to do with showing the most Christmas spirit. Both of these books will be available in September. Now I'm going to pass it back to Anne.
Okay, just to wrap up our meeting today, I just wanted to thank you all for joining us. Thank you to our 5 authors who gave us their time this afternoon. I think we were all really entertained by that conversation, just hearing some of their processes and more about their books. I don't know about you guys, but it's just really fun to get a peek behind the curtain sometimes to see, how some of our favorite stories come to being. And we're just really excited for our whole summer list and some of these picks, especially our staff picks also. So yeah, we just hope you enjoyed. Thank you also for bearing with some of our technical difficulties. As some of you might have noticed, our chat was disabled there for a little bit, but don't worry. After this meeting today, an email will go out with, first of all, a link to the on-demand presentation, so you can watch this back again later if you'd like to. And also, I believe that email should contain my email address if you want to send questions about our authors, about some of the books that we have coming out in upcoming seasons, just anything, feel free to send those my way. So I do want to advance to our next slide just to show some information. So again, to find more information about the titles mentioned in today's presentation, you can either check some of the links in the chat or visit us at bakerpublishinggroup.com. We're also going to encourage you to subscribe. We have our library newsletter list that offers curated content, info on new releases, communication from authors that's exclusive, and more just for librarians like you guys. You can join our newsletter list by scanning that QR code on your screen. And this is one final plug. Don't forget to connect with us on socials. We have our own Facebook and Instagram accounts for Revell Fiction, as well as those same things for Bethany House Fiction. So follow your favorite, give them both a follow, see what we're up to, and connect with us on those channels also. I'll leave the QR code up for a little bit, just in case you guys need it, but this is the official end of today's presentation. Thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.